Welcome to AU Nation. Each week we bring together members of the Auburn Student Media Group and discuss the latest topics in the world of sports. I'm Evan Blank. On today's show, we'll predict upcoming Sweet 16 round of the NCAA tournament, talk some Auburn baseball, and end the show answering our burning question. Now let's introduce today's panel of experts. Our first guest today is Noah Gardner. We took a week off for spring break. Noah, how have you been?
Been doing pretty good, man. I've been watching all that basketball, been having a good time. Too bad I had to set my bracket ablaze, and now I'm ready to talk about it.
Well, we can't wait to see how bad it looks. And our other expert today is Keith Gambill. He's a sports reporter for Eagle Eye TV. Keith, how are you today?
Doing well. Thank you for having me on. It's good to be back, and I'm ready to talk about my busted bracket as well.
All right, and we'll get to that in just a second. But, guys, let's keep it local, and we'll start with Auburn baseball. The Tigers are coming off a 3-game sweep of 5th-ranked Florida. What do you make of Auburn's start in SEC play? Noah, we'll start with you.
At the same time, it's monumental and a little premature. Monumental because it's huge when you can get a sweep in the SEC. It puts you in a really good position earlier on in the season when you're the sweeper, not the sweepee, in terms of standings and wanting to get a good seed in the SEC tournament at the end of the season. Not to mention, they've got a pretty easy road start this weekend coming up against Georgia. They're the worst team in the SEC. I don't know if I would put them on the same level as SEC programs. If you can win that series or possibly sweep it, 2 sweeps put you at 6-0, you're in pole position in the SEC. But at the same time, it's premature because I think Florida's a little overrated. Not to mention, just because they swept Florida, it's not like all of Auburn's issues have magically disappeared. They still have depth issues with the pitching staff. 1 injury to an arm, and it's a domino effect. And a lot more stress is added to already stressed arms. Tiger fans, pump the brakes. Don't let expectations happen yet, because as a team that wants to contend, you've got to do it consistently. Let's talk after the Georgia and then the South Carolina series to see how Auburn's doing this from a consistency standpoint before we say Auburn's a contender this year.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. But, I think up to this point, while you want to weather the expectations, I think this team having 20 of the 32 members of the team are new guys. So I think it's really optimistic for this team to look forward and look to the future and see that Butch Thompson really has something going here. I think the sweep against Florida was huge. That's the first time Florida's been swept since 2003. And this is the first time Auburn is ranked this week for the first time since 2015 and 25. First time since 2014 that Auburn cracked the top 20 in the polls. Yeah. So while I understand it's very, very early in the season and Auburn fans should not get too hyped up about it, I think the future is very promising under Coach Thompson and these players that he's bringing in right now.
Yeah, but I think if we isolate the series, it is significant historically. I mean, it's been since 1987 Auburn swept Florida. That's when Frank Thomas was still roaming on that field. That's a long time ago. Like they said, guys, pump the brakes a little. Let's wait and see after a couple more series. But there's no doubt that Auburn's looking really good thus far. At the top of the SEC West, obviously Missouri at the top of the SEC East right now after they swept Alabama to start the season. But let's look at what's going on today. And Auburn travels to Georgia Tech today and Georgia Tech this weekend for their first road tests of the season. How do you guys expect this trip to go for Auburn? Keith, we'll start with you.
I have absolutely zero clue how this trip's going to go for Auburn. This is their first road trip of the season, and like I said earlier, 20 out of 32 guys are new on this team. Even Butch Thompson said in his post-game interview he has no idea how we're going to play on the road. So you like to think with all the, I guess, struggles and battles that this team has gone through so far this season that they will do well on the road, but I like to think that they'll play well, but I honestly have no idea. I've got to wait and see how these new guys respond away from Plainsman Park.
Georgia's lost twice to Mercer, once to Kennesaw State, twice to Ryder. I don't even know where Ryder is. And in a sweep, they got swept by LSU this past weekend. In one of their losses to LSU, they gave up 22 runs. This pitching staff as a whole, I'm amazed, is only giving up 5.45 in their ERA. Batting averages at a 264 for the team. Only 2 players bat above 300. Georgia is bad. This is what I meant by I don't know if this is an SEC caliber team. I feel like on paper Auburn should handle them quite easily, but I'm with you, Keith. I don't quite know how Auburn's going to handle the road environment. A successful weekend for Auburn is 2 wins. A sweep, 6-0, like I said, puts them at pole position. I think a sweep's possible. Not calling for it, though.
Yeah, I think the Georgia series they obviously, I think from a psychological standpoint, just looking at Georgia, have to win 2 of 3 to keep momentum going from the non-conference schedule. Something we can't overlook is this game at Georgia Tech tonight. They do this game every year, go to Atlanta. Georgia Tech usually plays them tough. It's a nice little non-conference rivalry they've got going. So that'll be interesting to see as the first road game of the season.
Mm-hmm.
All right, but coming up after the break, these guys want to tell you all about their brackets. They're just going up in smoke right now. And we'll make some Final Four predictions with the bracket as it stands. This is Eagle Eye TV.
I hope that you've been able to learn a strong work ethic surrounded by character, integrity, perseverance, so that when your 1 second comes, you'll be prepared for it.
Chris Davis.
45, there goes Davis!
Your 1 second, our 1 second is now. And our lives have been guided by the principles of one of the greatest academic institutions in the country, Auburn University.
The first 2 rounds of the NCAA tournament have been completed, and teams are gearing up for the Sweet 16 and Elite 8 games this weekend. Let's revise our busted brackets and make some Final Four predictions. Guys, we're going to start out with the East region. Lot of wild stuff going on in that. Villanova lost to Wisconsin, and so Wisconsin and Florida, will start with that game. Keith, who do you like in the game between the Badgers and Gators?
Fully hopping on the Wisconsin train now. I think they have been by far the most impressive team for one of the higher seeds. I think the seeding was completely messed up in terms of Wisconsin. They're a much better team than they were seeded and originally predicted to be. And yeah, I think these first 2 games, they've impressed me the most of any team in the tournament. So I'm going to have them beating Florida. Although Florida did play well, I'd like to think that they're not going to be able to hang with the Badgers.
Yeah, coming out of this region, I'm going to have Wisconsin. Mainly that game against Florida, without John Igbunu for the Gators, who's going to match up with Ethan Happ?
Right.
And Ethan Happ had a great game against Villanova. I think they were coming into that game, Wisconsin was 12-2 in games that Ethan Happ scored like 15 points or more. Well, Ethan Happ got his. He was big on the glass. I think he'll have another huge day, but not to mention with all the focus being on Ethan Happ in the post, you can't forget about Nigel Hayes and Bronson Koenig, the 2 best players on the Badgers. So then you move on to the next round, and you're thinking about who can they play. They're playing 2 Cinderella teams-ish. I don't view Baylor as a 3 seed. I know they're ranked as that, and then South Carolina is a 7. I don't think those 2 teams match up well with Wisconsin. Wisconsin's got guys on this team that are from that squad that lost in the national championship to Duke. They're going back to the Final Four.
Yeah, I like Wisconsin in this game. I usually like, if I think teams are evenly matched, like I think Florida and Wisconsin are, I like to pick the team with the best player on the court. And to me, that's Nigel Hayes. And he's just got so much experience, and that's what I think puts Wisconsin over the top. Let's go to Baylor and South Carolina. Noah, we'll start with you this time.
It's a tough one. I think South Carolina's Cinderella run is coming to an end. For them to play that well throughout all of that, going through Duke and then having to play really well against Baylor, I just don't think they can put consistent performances like that because they haven't done that this season. And so I like Baylor just from that standpoint.
This one's a toss-up to me, I think. I think the home crowd was kind of overlooked in terms of South Carolina was playing in Greenville. I mean, it was essentially a home crowd for them. And I know Duke's going to bring fans, but that was huge for South Carolina. Now they're playing up in New York, and I don't see the Gamecock fans traveling nearly that far to support the team for this one. So I'm going to go with South Carolina because I like to think that they're going to stay hot, but I think this one's a toss-up. I really don't know about this one.
Yeah, it's a long way for both fan bases to travel. I'm going to take Baylor just because I think they've gotten more experience in big games than the South Carolina team has. But now we go over to the Midwest region. Kansas and Purdue, Michigan and Oregon are remaining. Who is going to head to Phoenix out of this group? Keith, we'll start with you.
I think the Michigan Wolverines are. I'm a huge fan of them. They're playing great right now. They're kind of the Cinderella story of the tournament. They've won, 8 or 9 in a row in tournament play, like going back to the conference tournaments. Yep. And I had them in my Final Four beginning before the tournament. So I really like to see this team, keep staying hot and playing well.
I like your Michigan pick. I do. I'm going to agree with you there. They've got Oregon coming up next. While Oregon looks like the favorite without Chris Boucher, I think that's going to be a really big deal for them defensively, a big big thing for this is nobody's been able to guard Moritz Wagner. You know, he's been big time, and he's almost kind of came out of nowhere, and he's been a great player for them throughout the season, but he has been kind of that guy for them, along with Derek Walton Jr. And right now, like you said, Michigan's hot. I like them to beat Oregon, and then in the next round, I think Purdue will advance on. They'll play Purdue. Purdue hasn't beaten Michigan in 2 tries this season. I like Michigan to get their 3rd win in a row over the Boilermakers.
Yeah, I'm going to sort of be non-committal about it. I'm going to say the winner of the Kansas-Purdue game wins the region. I just think that on both cases, once again, best player on the court. I think whichever team of that Purdue and Kansas game wins. Obviously, we know all the great Kansas players. Purdue has Caleb Swanigan. I think he's going to be a force on the next level for a number of years. And I think that the injury to Chris Boucher for Oregon just absolutely kills them. And I think Michigan's run comes to an end, though, in this game. I think Oregon's a better team than people think. So I have the winner of the Purdue-Kansas game. But now we move on to the South region, and this is the one, folks. UNC is going to take on Butler. UCLA is taking on Kentucky. Of those remaining teams, Keith, which of these teams will be making a trip to Phoenix?
I think it's going to be UCLA and UNC going to the next round there, and I think UNC is going to advance. I know it's not a super exciting pick, but I like to think that Arkansas team really scared the heck out of them, and I think that they took Arkansas lightly, and I think it kind of woke them up, and I think that they're going to start playing the basketball they've been playing all season and advance to the Final Four in that region.
I mean, you agree a lot. I like the Tar Heels as well. They're not going to have any trouble with Butler, I don't think. I don't view Butler as a very good basketball team. And then I don't care who they're playing, whether it's Kentucky or UCLA. I think UCLA is going to be a better matchup for North Carolina just in terms of I don't think UCLA as a whole can defend North Carolina. And I don't think in the post they match up well with UNC. UCLA has been a very efficient basketball team on the offensive end, but not so much on the defensive end. And that's where it separates these two teams. Kentucky and North Carolina, by the metrics, are the 2 best squads left in this region. North Carolina, though, is a top 5 team according to KenPom ratings. UCLA, barely a top 15 team. It came down to really Kentucky and North Carolina for me, but I'm going with the Tar Heels just because I like their defensive presence and what they're doing right now in March.
I will be taking the UCLA Bruins. That's my team, and I'm riding with them. I'd like to point out on my bracket, gentlemen, I have picked every single game in every round correctly in the South region. So I am rolling with my picks. I'm going UCLA over North Carolina. I think if they get past Kentucky, I think the UNC game, honestly, will be easier for UCLA. We all know about Lonzo Ball, but I think the big factor, I've been saying it all year long, is TJ Leaf and how he plays in this game. So now finally we move over to the West region. Gonzaga is going to take on West Virginia, and Arizona is going to take on Xavier. Who do you think will be heading to the Final Four out of this region? Keith, we'll start with you.
Before the tournament started, I had Arizona come out of here, and I'm still going to stick with that. That being said, Xavier has played unbelievable so far these first. I mean, they absolutely waxed Florida State. So I would not be surprised if Xavier comes out here on top, but I'm going to stick with Arizona just because I haven't really seen a reason to pick against them yet. So I'm going to stick with my original pick and stick with Arizona.
We got the exact same Final Four. Whatever, man. I like Arizona. You know, Gonzaga and West Virginia are playing each other. I'm not even putting Xavier in the same category. Sure, they went on a Cinderella run. It's ending here. Right. Arizona plays great defensive basketball. They've got just as good guard play as Xavier. I mean, in my opinion, Arizona has the best guard play in this region, and guard play goes a long ways. And then they couple that up with great defensive basketball. Arizona looks like the best team out of this region, better than Gonzaga. I actually could have possibly lobbied for Arizona to be a 1 seed, but I totally understand why Gonzaga's there. I think West Virginia is going to beat Gonzaga, so then you've got this West Virginia-Arizona matchup. West Virginia's kryptonite, despite the fact that I love West Virginia a lot, and I think that they're a really good basketball team, is that when they run into a team who A, doesn't turn the basketball over, and B, shoots free throws very well, West Virginia just can't match up because they can't shoot the basketball well. They really hang their hat on forcing turnovers. Arizona doesn't turn the basketball over, and they shoot free throws at 76% clip.
Arizona was my pick to come out of this region to start. I'm sticking with them. I'm picking Gonzaga to meet up with them, and I think if that's the matchup, I'm going to make a bold prediction and say Gonzaga-Arizona will be the most exciting Elite Eight game. These teams know each other. They played once earlier this year. It was a solid game, and Gonzaga's going to have a chip on their shoulder. Even with that 1 seed, they've always had a chip on their shoulder. But I'm picking Sean Miller and Arizona. Like Noah said, guard play and defense are so important in the tournament, and that's what I think pushes the Wildcats through. But we're going to come up next, and we're going to answer our burning question to finish out the show. That's next. This is AU Nation.
So, I just moved in with this family, and it's embarrassing. The little one, he likes to go outside and crawl around in the giant litter box. I don't know what he's doing. I mean, I was born and I knew how to use the litter box. Look at that. That's disgusting. Oh, poop already. You're making me nervous. Oh, okay, I can't look at this anymore. I really hope he grows out of this, for his sake.
Our burning question today comes out of the NBA and one of the biggest storylines going on in sports right now. The Golden State Warriors and Cleveland Cavaliers have been under a lot of scrutiny recently for resting their superstars on road games that happen to be primetime nationally televised games as well. Is there a possible way to fix NBA players resting games? Gentlemen, this is a question that's been tearing up the sports world. I guess, Noah, we'll start with you. What are your thoughts on this?
I mean, if you're wanting to make rules, I don't see how you can mandate something like this, especially when you're dealing with older players. I don't like the resting of players, but at the same time, I've got to be more specific when I say that. I don't like the resting of players in big-time games that mean something. Golden State rested players against the Spurs. And, you know, those teams are jostling for the 1 seed. Why would you rest those players in that game? Cleveland rested players against the Clippers. Although not a conference matchup, still a big game. Why are you resting guys at that point? You know, and also the Celtics are trying to chase them down for the 1 seed. You're trying to hold on for the 1 seed. Why are you resting guys? There's no way for me to mandate this from the league, especially when you're dealing with older guys and they're, you know, you need a little bit more rest at that age to avoid injury. So I do understand it from that point, but at the same time, if you're under 30 years old, play some ball, especially play some ball in the big games. Mm-hmm. It takes away from the luster, and there's already a competition question for the NBA this year. But how competitive is it, and does the regular season mean that much? To take your best players out of the biggest games, it lends a hand to that argument that the regular season is not meaning that much.
I couldn't agree more. Adam Silver came out and spoke about this yesterday, and I'm a huge Adam Silver fan, and it's going to be a really interesting balance for the NBA because, I mean, it's like...
It's hard to make a rule for it.
Exactly. And so they realize it's a players. They're trying to watch out for their players, but they also understand the fans are getting screwed here. I mean, that was a nationally televised ESPN game, the Clippers-Cavs. And like you said, it won a conference matchup, but it's a primetime game, and ESPN's getting screwed here too. The ratings are getting screwed for ESPN. So next season, you like to think it's going to be a little better because the NBA is cutting the preseason shorter and extending the regular season by a week next season. Yeah. So you like to think that's going to help a little bit, but I still don't think it's going to completely take away from the resting issue. And I wish there was a surefire solution, but I just simply don't see how to strike that perfect balance.
Well, it comes off to me as a PR move almost. Mm-hmm. As, you know, Golden State's right here at the end of the season. I also use Cleveland as an example as well. But Golden State right here at the end of the season, Kevin Durant goes down with injury.
Right.
And if you lose with all of your other bodies other than Kevin Durant, it almost looks bad on the Golden State Warriors from the standpoint of the media is going to say, okay, Warriors aren't going to be a title contender without Kevin Durant.
And this has been a problem. Like Keith said, I am an Adam Silver fan as well. But you have a job as a commissioner. Adam Silver's known as a very player-friendly commissioner. Mm-hmm, yeah. You have to dial that back a little, and that's why people don't like Roger Goodell. People didn't like David Stern. People didn't like Bud Selig. But you know what? under all those commissioners, their sports had unprecedented growth.
Right.
And right now, you look at the NBA ratings, they're down. And when are these guys all of a sudden getting all this rest? Oh, when all this big TV money comes in. And Adam Silver's job is to manage partnerships across all these different platforms. And one of your biggest partners is your partnership with ESPN, ABC, and with Turner.
Yep.
And you are just absolutely giving them the middle finger
Right.
on this. Why not cracking down? Now you can't crack down on this because it's too late. It's already started, and now, like you said, you can't really legislate anything to make it stop. It's honestly, to me, it's just a ridiculous thing, and I don't know how you can fix it.
Here's the only thing that's came to my mind. You don't play, you don't get paid. Okay, so basically if you're taking a rest day, you're going without pay. You don't get that games pay. And that would create a little bit more incentive for the players to want to play. But at the same time, the guys that are resting are big-time players, and they're getting paid on almost max contracts.
Yeah, one game's
to
not
miss
gonna-
to miss one game's not going to really hurt them. So
Right.
you got to find that balance, like you said, Evan.
And plus, if you were to do that and say we're not going to pay you, then what you're going to have is you're going to have teams and trainers just lying and saying, oh, he's not resting, he's got an upper respiratory infection or
Right,
something
exactly,
like that.
exactly.
Or a strained MCL or something like that.
Where's the line there between a rest and injury? You know, a guy, if you have a slightly sprained ankle and those guys could play through, you know, you could rest and say, my ankle was hurt. That's a whole nother, you got to figure out that line there.
It's going to be an increase in oblique injuries on the injury report.
Right.
That's right. All right, gentlemen, it's a great topic, and I'm sure it's going to rage on until something changes with it. But guys, thanks a lot for being on. We love having both of you on.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us on here.
All right, thank you for watching AU Nation today. We will be right back here again next week. We'll see you then.